You're listening to Dairy Voice by Dairy Business News, a podcast exclusively for the dairy industry.
One of our sponsors of the Dairy Voice podcast is National DHIA. NDHIA ensures information accuracy and represents their members' interests. They are the direct voice for the dairy information industry. To find out more, go to dhia.org.
This episode is brought to you by DRMS, a trusted provider of dairy information and decision tools. As a nonprofit with deep ties to NC State and Iowa State universities, we've spent over 65 years serving the dairy industry, delivering research-backed software, standardized data, and exceptional customer support. Our dedicated team works alongside producers and consultants to ensure they get the training, tools, and insights they need. We turn complex herd data into clear, actionable insights that help producers and consultants make informed decisions every day through solutions built in collaboration with the dairy industry. Learn more at drms.org.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Opperman, and I'll be your host for Dairy Voice, a podcast produced by Dairy Business News. Today, we're going to be talking about a new tool to help evaluate fresh cows. Even with all the data available to today's dairy producers, evaluating fresh cow performance has always been tricky. That changes with the launch of the Fresh Cow Index, or FCI, a brand new metric inside Herd HQ from Dairy Records Management Systems. In this episode, we sit down with Dr. Robert Fourdraine, Assistant Director of Product Development at DRMS, to talk about how the FCI makes it easier for producers and consultants to measure transition success, spot problem cows early, and make more confident management decisions. Developed with the University of Florida and powered by DRMS data from over 3 million cows, FCI combines 25 variables into one simple, actionable score. And Robert will share why this is such a game changer for transition cow management and how you can start using it today. Welcome, Robert. So let's start with you, Robert. Tell us about your role at DRMS and what you focus on.
Sure. I'm the Assistant Director of Product Development, and I lead not only the operations of the organization, but also the technology and research initiatives. So the key is that we want to turn, raw herd data into practical tools that dairy farmers can use. I've been in the industry for 35 years. I've worked with various livestock species, and part of my work was centered around livestock identification, which is also very important, and a dairy information system, and being involved in development of various ag software programs. I believe in connecting and innovation and make sure the solutions are data backed. I've worked with federal researchers. I've worked with industry researchers to build new on-farm applications. So as you mentioned, most recently at DRMS, we've been working very closely with producers, consultants, and industry partners to develop tools like the Fresh Cow Index and take what can be very complex data into something that is actionable.
With over 85 projects, California Bioenergy is without a doubt one of the leading developers of anaerobic digesters for dairy farms in the United States. Since 2006, CalBio has been forming successful partnerships with dairy farmers to create digesters that are built to last. Our CalBio team has the expertise to help lead you through the entire development process. From project design and engineering to credit generation and the day-to-day operations. With subsidiaries in the Northwest, Midwest, and Southwest, CalBio is ready to partner with dairy farmers across the country. Learn more at calbioenergy.com.
And that's really what data comes down to, right? Is creating actionable systems and outcomes. So tell us a little bit more about FCI and why it's important.
Yeah, FCI is as a new metric that is part of our Herd HQ suite of products. So those are web-based, and it allows you to evaluate your transition cow performance using one single measure. Now, that measure comprises of 25 variables that are pulled together from DHI test day data, but it also includes the Council on Dairy Cattle Breeding genetic evaluations. So we have several models that roll all that data into one single number. Basically, the outcome is a single value, and as I mentioned, we look at what should the cow be performing, what's her expected performance, and what did she actually do the first 5 to 40 days in milk. So 100 means she did what she was supposed to do. A value over 100 means she's doing better than what we expected. However, if she's below 100, then she underperformed. So why is this important? Because transition cows are most vulnerable on the dairy. So it's like starting a marathon. If you start out poorly in the beginning, it's going to end up pretty bad at the end as too. So we can see where early performance carries through the rest of the lactation, and looking at that FCI value gives you a very good indication, a trusted benchmark to catch problems early and support profitability.
So I know you have your Herd HQ platform. How does FCI fit into that?
So FCI is part of what we call the Fresh Focus bundle of transition cow programs. We have different reports. It's all web-based. Producers can access it online. Their data goes to DRMS. They go to a benchmarking or a dashboarding tool called Dairy Depot, and they will find a section called Transition Cow Reports. So there'll be various summaries that focus on FCI. It's accessible not just by producers, but also consultants. Beside FCI, they can see somatic cell count, culling risk, animals leaving the herd less than 60 days in milk. You can look at individual animals. Of course, if you see an animal with a low score and you want to find out why, dig deeper through our Cow Compass, which is the web-based cow lookup. Those are some products that are available via Herd HQ, and we're looking forward to adding this also to our DART herd management software in the upcoming year.
That's interesting. I know that when it comes to transition cows, there's a lot of different, performance indicators that producers can look at. What makes FCI different from some of those other transition cow KPIs?
Yeah, and I think, the model that we developed was based on over 3 million records that DRMS had collected. It was data that came from various parts of the country. So, it reflected the whole United States, different management styles, different breeds. And we wanted to look at both the milk side and for those farmers that get paid on components, energy corrected milk. It's available for not just older lactation cows, but also first lactation cows. So we can look at what's the potential of a heifer when she becomes a milking animal. Combining all that data with cure rates, peak milk ECM, you can see how valuable that FCI is in predicting the future. You can look at all the 25 individual variables that go into FCI, but having just a single measure makes it a lot easier than trying to evaluate 25 different things.
Industry is making an effort to make data simpler to use, so it sounds like this falls right into that category.
That is correct.
And as producers look at FCI over time, what are some of the things that they can look at from a trend standpoint?
So the way it's presented is it's grouped by calving month. So you want to look at all the animals that calved in a particular month and track that distribution. You're going to have cows that are overperforming. You're going to have cows that are underperforming. So, you want to look at the consistency from month to month. You can have a lot of variation, but you want really a small variation, and then you track it over time. So if you make changes in your nutrition, or maybe you do something in the barn, you can see how that's impacted from month to month for those animals that are calving. It could be seasonality. We've gone through the summer. Maybe your barn isn't set up very well to deal with summer heat and humidity. You'll be able to see if there's an impact on that initial calvings. Why is it valuable? The earlier you know there's going to be a problem, or you have a group of animals that are potentially problematic, you can take interventions and deal with that. You can come up with some very valuable information in those first 40 days in milk that will impact really the long-term outcome of those animals.
Not only valuable for individual cows, but for the whole herd too, right? To look at how
Correct.
your herd is
Yes.
performing. Can you kind of share some of the proven impacts from FCI that you've seen so far?
Yeah, and I mean, you can have all kinds of measurements, but what's the economic impact on your farm? So we looked at 1 million animals, first lactation cows, second and older, and say, okay, so if I have cows that are, very low FCI, like a 70, versus cows that are very high, like 130 or above, what do we see further down that lactation? So we looked at peak milk, we looked at their 305-day energy corrected milk, and we also looked at culling rates. The culling rates, comparing the low FCI versus the high FCI, the high FCI cows were basically 3.5% lower culling rates for first lactation than the low FCI ones. So peak milk was even more astounding. The high FCI cows produced on average 94 pounds of milk in their first lactation, while the low ones were only 69. So now, if you look at it from a dollar perspective across the whole lactation, those cows that had a great start to their transition, they produced on average almost 6,500 pounds more milk. So if you do that at $25 a hundredweight, that's a lot of money. And that's just your first lactation cows. On your older lactation cows, it actually is even more. Culling was almost 4% difference. Peak milk was 40 pounds difference. And then your overall milk production, that was almost 10,000 pounds difference between the low FCI and the high FCI. There's a lot of good predictive value in those FCI values. Having lower culling rates, higher production, less transition cow problems, I think that's really important. And having that one measurement to tell you how you're doing from month to month can be extremely valuable.
Well, those outcomes certainly validate that the index works, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
And that, that's with anything, what's really the true impact of it? And we were
Yeah.
able to use our actual data to see what it was.
So you mentioned earlier that consultants have access to it. How can they use FCI to work with their clients?
If they have a dairy farm that works through DRMS, consultants can also access our website and Herd HQ products. If they have the permission from the dairy farmer, they can look at, say if they work with 20 herds, they can evaluate, they can make their own dashboards that include transition cow reports. There's an annual summary where they can basically see what would have been the impact over the past year if this herd did not have all these low FCI cows. How much milk, more milk would we have produced, and how many less cows would have had to cull? So that's available, like I said, to the producer can look at it themselves, or if they're more comfortable working with, their consultant, they just have to give them access to their data.
It's been in the market for a little bit. What early herd success stories or scenarios stand out to you since FCI has been released?
Yeah, we had a really neat story here from earlier this year where we had a dairy farm that we were looking at, 1,300 cow herd. I noticed a sudden drop towards the end of January. Animals that were calving the end of January, they had a sudden drop in FCI values that kind of continued into February. When we talked to the dairy farm, the owner, I said, so can you tell me what happened about the middle of January? And he says, well, we changed rations. A nutritionist made a change, but we didn't really catch until a month later that it was impacting, pretty much all cows from fresh cows all the way through. So what was neat about this tool was I saw the date that this changed. Basically cows that calved after that first half of January, you could see the FCI values were dropping. So in all, we probably could have, if we had known what was going on, we could have caught this probably at least 2 weeks earlier on 1,300 cow dairy. That's quite a bit of milk.
Obviously, this is an impactful tool and a cool innovation. If you got out your crystal ball, how would you see FCI shaping how producers manage transition cows in the near and distant future?
I think there's a couple items there. It's obviously, you can track it from month to month to see if something happens like that you don't like, or you can make improvements and see if they're working. So it gives the whole management team an opportunity to improve their overall transition cow management and track the changes and see if The investments to, maybe they build a new barn or a transition barn. Well, how's that paying off? And, they could go to their bank and ask for a loan and justify why they need a loan. But the other thing, one of the things that we're seeing is, the emphasis of dairy farms to breed their dairy cows with beef. So some of the challenges that we're seeing now, you can get $1,600 for a beef calf. People are spending all their efforts on trying to generate as many as they can. So their heifer inventory gets a lot smaller. So you cannot afford to lose a lot of first lactation cows early on lactation because you may not have any replacements out there. Improving that transition cow management and lowering that culling rate can play two roles, not only improve the cows themselves, but also give you more opportunities to breed cows with beef because you have less turnover.
Yeah, so it extends the longevity of your cows in your herd, right? So
Correct.
those older cows that milk more also add more to the bottom line that way too. So just to kind of wrap up, if you're a producer that's listening, what's kind of the first step to getting started using FCI?
So like I mentioned, we have those 25 variables that go in it. We obtain that data for herds that participate in DHI milk recording. So we have, the milk weights and all the data, the breeding data, etc. The other part is the participation in getting genetic information because that also plays a very important role in predicting what that cow will produce. So that data is available through the Council on Dairy Cattle Breeding. So producers have to opt in to send their data to CDCB. As far as the value of the product only goes up if you do more frequent DHA testing. So I would say the best scenario is to test at least once a month so you can catch all those animals calving that month and monitor it. So we offer a 30-day free trial and Herd HQ to take a look at it. So if they want to see, what does it look like for my herd? If they're already participating in CDCB and milk testing, they can actually see what it looks like. It's a good way to get started. If they have questions, our support staff is available to walk them through, hopefully give them some useful hints as to how they can use the product.
FCI certainly sounds like a terrific tool that producers can use. Thanks, Robert, for your insights today. And thanks to our listeners for sitting in on our conversation with Dr. Robert Fourdraine from DRMS. If you happen to be looking for one clear number to evaluate fresh cow success, the Fresh Cow Index is available now in Herd HQ's Fresh Focus reports. It's backed by DRMS test day data and is developed with the University of Florida. FCI helps you see transition success at a glance and act with confidence. Learn more at drms.org/herdhq/what-is-herdhq or connect with your local DHIA service affiliate to get started today. This has been Mike Opperman for DairyVoice from Dairy Business News. And as a reminder, if you're a company out there who's looking for marketing communications or public relations support, make sure to look me up at blackdirtcommunications.com.